Remember that scene in Babylonia anime when we went into the underworld to rescue Gilgamesh? Erish gave us a bunch of questions to answer at the gates, and every time we passed through one, Ishtar kept shrinking in size until she was literally smaller than Fo. Erish explained that this was because her divinity was being drained with each gate we crossed. At first, it just seemed like a funny little gimmick to show how powerless she was in the underworld, especially compared to Erish. It was hilarious to watch the first time. But in the English translation, it turned into a stealth pun. Since English isn't my first language, I didn't really catch it at first. Slang and more advanced wordplay can be tricky, so I only just realized it recently while researching for this video. The words belittle and diminish can mean both to reduce in size and to shame someone, making Ishtar's shrinking way more clever than it seemed. Plus, it was a sneaky way to adapt the original myth, where Ishtar had to strip off her clothes at each gate. Instead of that, they just made her physically shrink. It's that kind of detail that hits you later, or when you know the full context. This is what we're doing today. You watch something, and at first it just feels off, or maybe you don't even like it. But then, on a random night, just as you're about to sleep, your brain suddenly tells you to think one more time. And just like that, you finally understand the mystery behind the scene. What used to be an annoying moment turns into one of your favorites. Now, of course, some of the stuff in this video is just theories I put together based on my research. There might be mistakes too, because, well, I'm only human. So if anything seems off or not quite right, feel free to help me out. At the end of episode 8 in Babylonia, there's that moment when Ushiwakamaru snaps back to her senses as Kingu, or fake Enkidu, releases the captured children. When she asks why, he just says that unlike Tiamat, he doesn't hold grudges against kids. But instead of seeing it as an act of mercy, Ushiwakamaru straight up mocks him for it. To her, this just proves how inexperienced Tiamat and her forces are when it comes to war. Coming from someone who's technically on the hero's side, that line already feels chilling. For some, it might even sound downright merciless. On top of that, Ushi is well known among kids because of the children's songs about her heroism. But that wasn't just some random statement from her. She knows exactly what happens when child prisoners of war are set free. History backs her up. You see, the tale of the Haika makes this pretty clear. This epic, written before 1330, tells the story of the Genpei War, the battle between the Taira and Minamoto clans for control of Japan in the late 12th century. It mentions how some Genji children, like Yoritomo and Ushiwaka, were spared instead of being killed. But because they survived, they eventually came back for revenge, becoming legendary figures in history. Meanwhile, the Haika made sure their enemies had no heirs left, and because of that, their enemies never had a chance to rise again. This is probably what Ushi meant when she mocked Kingu for letting the captured children escape. Another from the anime. This is just a small thought on a small scene. When Fo attacks Merlin, Fujimaru casually points out that they're evenly matched. It's already funny on its own, but this gets even better when you realize Fo is actually a beast, and Merlin is a grand or a candidate specifically meant to fight beasts. It's like watching a supposed world-ending threat brawl with the guy meant to stop them, but it just turns into a goofy slap fight. At the end of part 1, Fujimaru and Chaldea take down Goetia in Solomon's Grand Temple. At first, it just seems like another final battle location, nothing too crazy. If the story had ended in London or America, it'd just be another place. But since fate loves tying things to history, there's actually a wild connection here. You see, it's pretty fitting that Chaldea is the one to destroy Solomon's Grand Temple, because in real life, the actual temple was destroyed by the Chaldean Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar. And here's the really cool part. This guy had a title, Bakhat Nassar, which translates to Winner of Fate, or more literally, Fate Winner. Basically, this means Fujimaru and the Chaldea crew literally won fate. You can say they won against the game itself. That's just insane. The fact that Nasu and the writers went this deep into history is honestly amazing. History really does repeat itself. Now, let's jump to one of my favorite moments in the series. The scene where Muramasa slashes through Amakusa's castle and reality marble in Shimosa. There's something really cool about how Sengo Muramasa, using Shirou Emiya as his vessel, is the one who takes down Avenger Shirou Amakusa. But this detail only really clicks if you've watched Fate Zero and Unlimited Blade Works, or at least know Shirou's origin. In the original plot, Muramasa is able to cut through the Onriedo Castle and the Reality Marble with Tsumukari Muramasa because the castle's name is linked to Edo Castle, and the name Muramasa is tied to the downfall of the Tokugawa. If Amakusa hadn't named his castle in a way that echoed Tokugawa's, that attack wouldn't have worked. But honestly, I feel like there's more to it than just that. The plot earlier explains why Muramasa could cut it down, but what about Shirou? After all, they share the same body. Well, let's just say this is my own take on this. Amakusa's Shimabara Hell reality marble is nothing but fire, destruction, and despair. And the one who slices right through all of it is someone who was also born in a city of flames. Shirou Emiya. He went through the same kind of hell as Amakusa, but instead of being trapped by it, he kept moving forward. Even after losing everything, even after becoming nothing but a sword with no real identity, he refused to let despair win. That's why Amakusa's world of flames couldn't stand against the hero who lived through the same fate and still found a way to rise above it. A few years ago, I came across an interesting detail on Twitter. If you take a close look at Artoria Castor and Oberon's third Ascension animations, you'll see they're actually pretty similar. At first, especially if you haven't finished Lost Belt 6, it might seem like a case of lazy animating, but for those who know the full story, it actually makes a lot of sense. In the British Lost Belt, Oberon plays a huge role in guiding and mentoring Artoria Castor. He helps her through her journey, gives her important advice, and most importantly, teaches her magecraft. Their connection is reflected in their animations, making it more than just a coincidence. What might seem like a shortcut in animation is actually a clever design choice that adds to the story. In Lost Belt 4, most people's emotions change depending on the current Yuga. They're happy when everything is beautiful and miserable when things start to fall apart. But there are two exceptions: Asha and her father, Ajai. No matter what Yuga they're in, their personalities stay the same. Ajai, in particular, is always pessimistic, even during the peaceful times. Why is that? Well, Arjuna Altar's purges erase people from existence and wipe away memories of them. But they don't erase the feeling of loss. People still feel like something is missing, even if they don't remember exactly what. On top of that, objects connected to those who were erased are still left behind. You can clearly see the origin of his pessimistic nature once you've finished Lost Belt 4 and seen Asha's memorial craft essence. It reveals that their family was actually much larger and full of life. But by the end of the story, only Ajai and Asha remain. That means he's not just mourning his wife, he's probably lost other children too. This is why he's so much more pessimistic than everyone else. Even if he doesn't remember them directly, he still feels that something is missing, and deep down, he knows that something is terribly wrong. The more loved ones he loses, the deeper his pessimism grows. This would also explain why he's so quick to grab a weapon when the rebels from Duval show up. Those rebels started fighting back because they realized people had disappeared. The fact that Ajai joins them so easily suggests that he too had already been thinking about rebelling against Arjuna Altar. Hans Christian Andersen and Nursery Rhyme don't exactly have the best relationship, but ironically, he's actually one of the best support servants for her in critical hit-based teams. At first, it seems like a funny coincidence, but the more you think about it, the more it just clicks. Hans isn't just supporting a book, he's literally lifting up his own creation. As one of the greatest writers of children's literature, many of the fairy tales that shape Nursery Rhyme's very identity come from him. The Little Mermaid, the Snow Queen, the Ugly Duckling. His stories didn't just define fairy tales, they breathed life into them. So in a way, he's part of what made her exist in the first place. And let's be real, a book is only as powerful as the writer behind it. In this case, Hans isn't just a storyteller, he's the one unlocking her full potential. So even if they bicker, Hans actually knows nursery rhyme better than most. This makes their dynamic both ironic and oddly fitting at the same time. In the Fuyuki Singularity, Cuchulainn Castor ends up winning the Holy Grail War. Before everything ends, he keeps insisting that you should summon a Lancer version of him. At first, it sounds like he's just talking about the usual Ku, our favorite uncle in tight blue spandex. But after his true identity as Odin's avatar was revealed, that line starts to feel like a clue. Maybe he wasn't just asking you to summon his regular Lancer self. Maybe he was actually hinting at summoning Odin as a Lancer. After all, Odin in mythology is a legendary spear user, just like Cuchulainn. That changes the meaning of his words completely. He wasn't just making a casual request. He could have been foreshadowing something much bigger. So what do you guys think? What are some other ordinary moments that turn extraordinary once you know the full context? Click subscribe and I'll see you guys next time.